Hi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ainin Sofia binti Sheridan, matric number 2019110. And today we are from Group 2, and our group consists of 5 people, which is the first one is me, and second one is Hana Shafika, Natasha Akila, Nurin Afika, as well as one Nur Imanina. So, our group today has chosen the topic of the role of intellectual and political leadership in empowering the Ummah. So, our presentation today consists of 4 parts, which is the first one, intellectual and political leadership. Second one is comparison between Islamic and Western leadership. The third one is why there was like a decline in political and intellectual leadership. And the last one is the role of intellectual and political leadership in empowering the Ummah. So the first one, the introduction will be covered by me. Okay, so, a community of Muslims that are related together by religions is the definition of Ummah. While the origin of the word obviously came from the Arabic word meaning community. While the word Ummah is used all around the world to unite every single Muslim possible. But people also tend to associate it Muslim calling each other Ummah has something related to their, for example, like geographical background. When Ummah is used, some would thought like, oh, the word is for Arabic people only. Huh? Right? However, the deeper definition of Ummah is a community of the same religion that has the same purpose in life, which is to worship God and dedicate life to Islam. And the people, can be coming from diversities of backgrounds, ancestors, and nationality. So we're gonna move on to the next slide. Next slide, we'll be talking about intellectual leadership. Okay. So intellectual leaders strive to alter the community through accomplishing and demonstrate to the supporters how their concepts and ideal may improve the social environment and to build a better future for everybody. The intellectual leaders teaches the workers that they are not the vital part of the community and must not be comfortable with the status quo. The clarity of vision enables the followers to grasp their roles to this potential society or community, as well as to accept the leader's mission. So the revolutions and charismatic leaders are all examples of transformative leaders. Transformative leaders are renowned to pursue alternatives which are both inventive and unconstrained, whereas transactional leaders are ready to work with the current processes and to compromise with each other to achieve the organizational objective itself. So we're going to move on to the next one. Okay. Political leadership. So understanding the need of political leadership is quite critical, for it to be successfully designed, launched, and maintained for the sake of the community. The long-term measures of political leadership would be that the plan is to preserve through plantations in political and economics. Uh, the economic phases and whether the result is higher than community cohesive or rather than the community the divisions. Yeah. So rejuvenations is a long term, the period of transformation that involves interruptions and risks and will cause political leadership to have a hard time. And it is also the diverse electorates to verifying from corporate executive to call them, I don't know, to the corporate executive to the local citizens, we feel they are involved in the process as well. So by acknowledging its significance to the city's future, it will have a legitimate avenues to which citizens can partake. Okay, next slide. Okay, so that it is known today that there are some arrogant forces that make provocative and aggressive movement in religious and ideological uh, arenas in order to set Muslims against one another. Some Muslims may utter like derogatory and haughty remarks about other Muslims and will blaze against them. So like brothers are joining forces with their adversary to like fight their own blood. Um, Furthermore, the Islamic world must return to the knowledge of no must return to the knowledge and rationality to have a clear grasp of the situation too, and to correctly analyzing them. And another critical necessity in the Islamic world is the unity of Muslim as well. Muslims must overcome pettiness and interpersonal and opposing worldviews in order to establish a united ummah. So next slide. All right. Okay. Now, a leader is responsible for their actions and therefore should be prepared to justify the why they do that, why the needs of it, what is the goods of it, what is the pros and cons of it. So in Islam, a leader prioritizes the genuine demands of the believers over their own, without jeopardizing their individual professional growth. And leaders must promote Tawhid, which is Allah oneness, as the foundations of their leadership beliefs. As a result, the problems of the power abuse may be appropriately controlled by the act of the piety or piousness, which is one's better understands one's duty not only as a caliph, which is representative of Allah on earth, but also as a servant of Allah. Okay? So in Islam, a leader is considered thoughtful and forgiving if they maintain an atmosphere of love and unity among themselves and their people. They handle their followers decently by upholding them, their rights, and avoiding any form of prejudice. Following that, any obligation that fulfilled are deemed ibadah or good actions, which means that they are held responsible for any positive or negative deeds. Furthermore, in Islam, a leader is also the one who teaches and educates their followers, and always being available to provide advices when requested. And lastly, a leader must encourage good and prohibit any evil in all activities committed. So that is all from me today. I'm gonna pass to the next presenter. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Natasha Akila binti Muhammad Saleh with metric number 2017644. So I will be presenting the comparison between Muslim and Western leadership. So before jumping deeper into the topic of political and intellectual leadership in Muslim world, we can make comparison between Western and Islamic leadership and see how both differ in certain aspects. As an overview, the term leadership is yet to be defined precisely. However, it is important that maintaining the relationship between leaders and followers will affect one another, especially to move towards certain goals that are benefiting for both parties. So from Western perspective, politics has been considered as a dirty job because the process of governing the state would include deceiving other people by making short-term sweet promises to gain self-interest instead of purely being responsible as leaders. So due to these worldly goals, religious people start to put politics away, which resulted to secularism. Mind that secularism is not only about politics, but here I want to highlight things that are related to our topic today. In the book Islam and Secularism, written by Sheikh Muhammad Naqib Al-Atas, he pointed out one of the notions of secularism, which is the secularization of politics. In this process of modernization, religion must be disassociated with politics. Therefore, religious people should practice their religion practices only in private. When the Western politicians want to make decisions, everything will be based on their secular ideology rather than religious reasoning. So from this, they believe that the separation between religion and state will make will make peace in the community and less conflicts occurrence because of the differences in religious belief. If you want to look from the intellectual aspect, there was a huge incident happening that caused the Western scholars to disassociate religion from knowledge, or to be specific, scientific knowledge, which was prominent during that time. It started when the church banned science, and some scholars were burned at the stake for believing something that is contrary to the orthodox religious beliefs. So, in order to avoid from that incident to happen continuously, scholars separated religion and science. This process resulted to use scientific theories made by the scholars, which rely on the nature instead, starting 17th century onwards. To compare, from the Islamic perspective, there is no distinction between worldly and afterlife matters because religion is regarded as a whole of a mankind. This means in everything that Muslims do will be counted as a deed, whether good or bad, and will be questioned later at the day of the judgment. So that's why politics must be done with justice and fairly to ensure that there's no dirty business circulating in the government and also within the Ummah. So leaders' characteristics should comply with what has been mentioned in the Quran and Hadith. So as you can see, there might be various of characteristics that a leader should have, but these are some of the example. So the first one is committed to Islam, which is wara'. The second one is having the knowledge and ability to understand the demands of the Islamic system. And third, have the capacity and competence to carry out the administrative duties, kafa'ah, and the last one is a strong resolution to uphold justice, which is adalah. So it is significant that the leaders should lead the Ummah with a guide from Naqli and Aqli sources, namely the Quran, Hadith, and also conventional knowledge. Consequently, everyone can understand and apply the concept of Tawhid, enforcing and following the Sharia, which means to submit to Allah, and it will be questioned later. However, Muslim leaders today are inclined to follow the steps of the Western leaders that mainly focusing on the ugly source. Therefore, in the next part of the presentation, my other group mates will explain further regarding the reasons for the declining in political and intellectual leadership. That's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Nurian Afika, metric number 2015414, and I will be explaining on the reasons why there was a decline in political and intellectual leadership. Okay, so the first factor is colonization. Okay, so from the mid 17th century through the 18th and early 19th centuries, certain Muslims have expressed an awareness of internal weakness in their societies. So in some areas, Muslims were largely unaware of the rise of the Europe. In others, such as India, Sumatra and Java, the 18th century actually brought European control. Okay, so in the case of the Ottoman Empire, restoration involved selective imitation of European things. Okay, so in 19th century Ottoman Empire, selective westernization coexisted with a reconsideration of Islam. So Tanzimat, it is the name given to the series of Ottoman reforms widely known during the reigns of Abdul Masih and also Abdul Aziz. Okay, so, and Tanzimat, it aims to emulate European law and administration by giving all Ottoman subjects, regardless of religions, equal standing and by limiting the powers of the monarch. Okay, so this Tanzimat reforms, it also provided political changes that were designed to improve the status of the non-Muslim population, and they were granted equal status before the law with Muslims for the first time. Okay, so the Ottomans sought to emulate the more advanced Western models to enable their society to modernize. Okay, so the Ottoman government began to centralize authority into its own hands to ensure that the Tanzimat reforms succeeded despite Islamic religious leaders and the majority Muslim population. Some of the reforms that were made were in education and also law. Okay, so for education, it was in 1846, there had been a first comprehensive plan for state education complete system of primary and secondary education till university. This is under Ministry of Education. It progressed slowly because of lack of money, but they provided a framework within which development toward a more systematic secular educational program could take place. Okay, so the most visible effects from this reform was that the Islamic clerics, all those ustads that had once upon a time dominated the Ottoman education, had their influence reduced. Okay, so next we will focus on the reforms in law, which is to make Ottoman law acceptable to Europeans so that capitulations could be abolished, and also the sovereignty recovered. Okay, so modernize the traditional Islamic law. This is clearly a red flag, if I must say, because Islamic law shouldn't be changed, as it is the teachings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and also Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. Okay, now we will discuss on the obstructions to the reform. Okay, so process of modernization and centralization moved steadily. However, there were some obstructions. Okay, so first is lack of money, lack skilled men, opposed by traditionalists. Okay, this one, they had argued that reformers were destroying the empire's fundamental Islamic character, which is true, if I may say. And also there were interference from major European powers. There had also been the arrival of young Ottomans in 1960s, which is Islamic Ottomans tried to identify the basic principles of European liberalism. And also Islamic protests often took form of jihads against Europeans. Okay, so underlying much of this activity was a pan-Islamic sentiment. Okay, now we will look at the impact of Tanzimat reforms on the Ottoman Empire. Okay, so firstly, education was completely secularized, and also the reforms were radical and also contrary to the Muslims' beliefs and also the Islamic teachings. Okay, for my final slide, I would like to suggest the solution on colonization. Okay, so it is a simple one, but I think we can all agree that we must learn from our mistakes and also we should learn from history. So the solution that I propose is to have a strong faith in self. Okay, so these are three of the most prominent Islamic reconstructions, and they all had warned against the blind pursuit of westernization, arguing that blame for the weaknesses of Muslims lay not with Islam, but rather with Muslims themselves. Okay, so because they have lost touch with progressive spirit of social, moral and intellectual reconstruction that had made early Islamic civilization one of the most greatest in human history. That is all from me. Thank you so much.
Okay, now I'll talk about the factor of the decline in intellectual leadership. The decline of intellectual leadership is because the leaders have overlooked the purpose of seeking knowledge. The purpose of seeking knowledge in this context is to obtain Allah's pleasure. When leaders do not aware of why they are seeking knowledge, it can make them deviate from the right path. For example, when they just learn blindly without looking into why Allah has commanded us to seek knowledge, they will learn something that is opposite to what has been commanded, such as knowledge on taking bribes. Nowadays, there are many people, or basically called Khalifah, or leaders on this earth, tend to learn something that are not going to bring them closer to Allah's pleasure. They turn around to the concept of leadership that is being highlighted by Allah. This action will produce a bunch of weak leaders. In an article written by Spahik Omer, the root cause of Muslim declination is weak leaders and ineffective government. Meanwhile, the Muslim glory in the Prophet Muhammad era is mainly due to the extraordinary spiritual and intelligence leader, which means that during Prophet Muhammad era, the companions and the Prophet Muhammad himself are very intelligent that they managed to win almost all of the battles. They were seeking knowledge to obtain Allah's pleasure and preserve the knowledge wholeheartedly. In exchange, Allah helped them in thinking of building smart strategy during wars. For example, the battles that showing an intelligence leadership of Prophet Muhammad and the companions is the Battle of the Trench or Khandaq War. The total number of enemy is about 10 times bigger than the Muslims' warrior, but due to the intelligence of the Muslims, they managed to win the war even though the gap of the number seemed impossible for the Muslims to win. The enemies were also shocked looking at how they managed to think of the strategy of digging the trench. The solution to this issue is that leaders must undergo an appropriate learning, which is they must be aware of the purpose of seeking knowledge first before learning. When they know the exact reason why they are seeking knowledge, which is for the sake of Allah solely, they will get to improve themselves to be an intelligent leader. Prophet Muhammad is the example of a leader who is seeking knowledge with the purpose only for Allah's sake. In return, Allah helped him in being an intellectual leader. In the Battle of the Trench, the leadership that is shown by the Prophet is the same as the characteristic of intellectual leaders in article published by the Unboxed Technology. The first one is that they always have a plan of action and invite others to join. They also stick to their plan and not easily deviate. Next, a key component of an intelligent leader is that they encourage their team not to be distracted by other things and help the teams if the problem occurs. In the Battle of Trench, Prophet Muhammad did move from group to group and help the digging of the trench and give them spirit. He also did the toughest job while helping the groups. Other than that, intelligent leaders do not conquer the work alone. Instead, they believe in their teams to do their role. In the Battle of the Trench, Prophet Muhammad divided the Muslims into groups and believed in them. He also helped them from time to time in digging the trench. This proves that one can be an intelligent leader through a proper seeking of knowledge. In making the Muslim glory shines again, intellectuals play an important role in empowering Ummah because they are well respected in the community. They can contribute to Ummah through various platforms such as learning institutions, governmental agencies, and non-governmental organizations, which is NGO. In learning institutions, teachers are the intellectuals who are responsible for empowering Ummah through knowledge. One of the ways to make students love to seek knowledge is to make the teachings fun and understandable, such as acting while teaching or do a debate on the topic discussed. The acting technique may enhance their creative thinking, while debate can open the students' mind and can make them think out of the box. Therefore, intellectuals must make the learning become attractive to raise the spirit of study and at the same time can empower the Ummah through knowledge. Next, the NGOs are the intellectuals who are responsible for empowering Ummah through community service or Da'wah bil Hal. As intellectuals play an important role in showing good attitude, community service done by the NGOs actually can capture the heart of the people and can make them aim towards being a beneficial person on earth to serve back to the community. Therefore, intellectual leaders such as NGO parties play an important role in empowering Ummah by doing the Da'wah bil Hal. Last but not least, the government parties are the intellectuals who are responsible for empowering Ummah. The government parties need to do a smart partnership with the NGOs in doing charitable activities because they can only administer appropriate grants and subsidies to the individual in need only through NGOs. The example of smart partnership between government agencies and NGOs is Al-Amin Clinic. In 2003, the Islamic Medical Association Malaysia (IMAM) proposed to the State Mosque and MUA, which is Islamic Religious Council and Malay Customs of Pahang, a smart partnership in Da'wah bil Hal to create a clinic within the mosque grounds. The idea was given to the Mu'ib's authorities, emphasizing the professionals' desire to empower the Ummah through this initiative. The final plan was given to His Royal Highness, who enthusiastically endorsed the idea and provided funding of nearly $500,000 ringgit to implement the service. The Smart Partnership in Dakwah Bilhal is a practical approach for instilling the kind of mentality that Ummah requires in order to progress. This success story exemplifies an attitude that must be copied and encouraged as a key means of empowering the Ummah to excellence and glory.
Assalamualaikum, I'm Imanina and I will present about the role of political leadership in empowering the Ummah. For this part, I separate it into two parts, which are number one, role in action, and number two, role in spiritual or moral or intellectual. First of all, I will explain the political leadership of role in action for this slide. The first point is making the Quran as the main source of state law. The Holy Quran contains the rules by which Muslim world is governed and forms the basis for the relation between man and man, between man and God, and also between man and other creations. On the other hand, it provides the means to solve all the problems and conflicts among individuals, which is they are Muslim or not, and between the state, between the individual and the state. The second point is by having shura before drafting the legislation and choosing the leader. Majlis Ashura or Shura Council in English is an advisory council or consultative council. In Islamic context, the Majlis Ashura is one of two ways that Khalifa, which is Islamic leader, may be selected. The other way is being by nomination. There are many benefits having Majlis Ashura for legislations. For example, the citizen will easily follow the rules of the states, whether they are Muslim or not, because they have been agreed for the rules by having the shura. Plus, they also will easily respect their political leader by having this. Next, give the safety guarantee to all citizens. This is a function of governments which ensures the protections of citizens present in their territory, organization, and also institutions against threats to their well-being and to the prosperity of the communities. For example, the government should have public safety organizations, including law enforcement, fire, and emergency medical services. By having this, all communities in the country will feel secure living in that country. Next point is making the country free religious country. All people in the country can profess any religion they want because Islam itself teaches us that there is no coercion in religion. Religious freedom protects people's right to speak, to live, and to act according to their belief peacefully and publicly. Then, the last point for this moment, the role in action of political leader is to promise to create a harmonious multicultural country. For example, in Malaysia itself, we have a lot of ethnics or cultures, such as we have Malay, we have Indian, and also we have Chinese. Living in a multicultural environment gives us more options to understand, to know, and to learn other cultures because we are different. So I will continue on the next slide. Thank you. So for this slide, I will share about the role of political leader in spiritual, moral, and also intellectual. The first point is by learning how to be a political leader. For example, the politician can go to some political classes or learn some sirah of the prophets to be ready to be a good politician, which is to be justice and sincere and many more, and to be worthy if they are chosen to be a political leader. The next point is understand the concept of ummah wasat, because the goal of Muslim ummah in this world of or even in Malaysia is to have a community of justice, excellence, and balance, which is ummah wasat. Next, having a good knowledge of the background of politics things. For example, they should know about the existing social, economic, legal, laws, political, and also the cultural realities. By having this, the politicians will know how to rule their employer in the best way. The fourth point is looking forward to get divine blessing from Allah, assistance and protection in material or immaterial forms as promised by Allah. The firm commitment and hold fast to condition of iman and taqwa by leaders are bound to lead them to a higher level of moral intelligence and spiritual intimacy with their compassionate master. The other point is understanding the worldview of the Quran to obtain the God-given Furqan. The given criterion to distinguish the truth from falsehood and nur by which Muslims would properly evaluate their present realities, challenges, and also crises, and practice Islam as a comprehensive and holistic way of life. And the last point is having good religious knowledge. By having this kind of characteristic, the relationship between the politician and God is really strong because he really knows his God. The Quran, Allah told us that leadership is in Islam is good in belief and willing submission to the Creator, which is Allah. So before I end my presentation, I want to point out that the best reference of the role of political leader in empowering the Ummah is from the Piagam Medina, or in English, we call that Medina Constitution. This is the best constitution in this world. So that's all from me and from my group. Thank you for listening. Thank you.